Welcome, Dr. Minesh, to our webinar series. Let's start with the introduction about yourself.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to share some thoughts with you today. I'm Dr. Minesh Khashu. I'm a consultant neonatologist in the National Health Service in the UK. I'm also a professor of perinatal health at Bournemouth University. And I have various roles, regional and national, in terms of leadership. But apart from healthcare, my overall interests beyond my area of practice are in large scale change, in social movements to generate health, and some bit of metaphysics.
You're in UK, one of the badly impacted countries. So, how is the situation now?
Yeah, unfortunately, United Kingdom has been affected quite badly. We've had over 20,000 deaths, which is very unfortunate, obviously. And things have been pretty bad. Having said that, I think we feel we're just perhaps beyond the peak now, unless obviously we get a second peak. So I think things are perhaps just showing effect in terms of physical distancing and the lockdown that we have had nationally. So we are all sort of hoping now that we are over the worst bits. Having said that, I think it's important to understand that apart from the COVID related harm to patients, the lockdown itself also has some unintended consequences. For example, it would lead to delayed presentation of people with symptoms. So we're expecting, in addition to the harm to patients or to the public related to the pandemic, there will be, because of the lockdown, some delayed diagnosis, for example, of say cancer. And a lot of the general work, the non-urgent work, has stopped in a lot of the hospitals. So people are not coming for diagnostic tests. People are not coming for some of the other routine stuff. So there is an expectation, unfortunately, that we will perhaps see some other unintended consequences of the pandemic as well.
Were we ready for this pandemic globally?
Unfortunately, I would love to have said yes, but unfortunately not. And I think which is quite surprising in some ways, disappointing in some ways. So if you look at the SARS, the MERS pandemic, if you look at some of the medical literature and various healthcare journals, we were warned that this is going to come. So this isn't as if nobody knew about it. So if you look at the last journal articles following, say, MERS or following SARS, they said, and they even mentioned what type of pandemic it is going to be. So based on that, I feel the global health community, the global leaders have been found quite inadequate, both at a global level as well as a national level, in terms of preparation for a pandemic.
Right.
I think in itself as well, we have had evidence to show that the government perhaps didn't complete some of the exercises in relation to pandemic related work. And I'm sure the UK government isn't unique. Most places across the world
Right.
have been wanting.
Right. So, what are the learnings so far, and what should change in the near term or post COVID?
One of the biggest learning for me, actually, from this pandemic has been, we call it a global epidemic or a pandemic, but we have not responded as a globe. We have not responded as a united planet. All activities, all interventions have been country specific. We haven't really come together as a human race and said, this is what we're going to do. Every country has gone for itself. Even if you look at the European Union, there hasn't been a joint response within the European Union for all its countries. So I think I find that quite disappointing and disheartening that we have had a big global crisis, but we have gone back into our nests and said we're going to sort ourselves bit out. We don't worry about the rest of the world in a way. So I think, to me, that is the biggest learning, is if this happens next time, are we going to again go back into our rabbit holes and sort ourselves out, or are we going to get bigger and better as citizens of this world and say, what can we do at a global level?
Right.
And that I also feel that the World Health Organization has been found wanting, not because of not trying, but because politically it seems to have lost a lot of its teeth.
Right.
And I think we ask ourselves, if we want a global organization, then we need to commit to that organization and give it the strength and the credibility and the power to make a global response. So to me, that is the first learning.
Right.
The second learning is that we have perhaps shown that things can be done differently. So in terms of our own healthcare system, we have been in a way forced. And as sort of Mahatma Gandhi used to say, necessity is the mother of invention, isn't it?
Right. Right.
So we've been forced
Right.
to work differently, whether it's online consultations, video consultations, and whatever.
Right.
Not perfect, but we have been forced. So I think one of the learning is, can we keep some of those good bits that we have done in the last few weeks
Right.
and make them better so that they serve the patient and the population better than just the healthcare organization. So I think to me, those are the two key
Right.
points really.
Right. So most of our webinars are viewed by investors and startup founders because we connect with the startup ecosystem all across the world. So what are the opportunities you see for the startups post-COVID or during COVID?
Yeah, so I think obviously by definition startups involve people who in a way, to some extent, within inverted commas, enjoy a crisis, isn't it?
Yes.
Their DNA is about change,
Right.
about transformation. And it's unfortunate, obviously, that we have lost a lot of lives. There's been a lot of suffering, misery. People have died without
Right.
their ones. But at the same time, to me, it has sort of brought forth huge opportunities for
Right.
startups. Some of the startups who are already in the pipeline, it has given them a catapult to move out. So, for example, a lot of the telehealth
Right.
sort of is got a bit of a push. But I think it will also generate some new ideas we haven't thought of so far, which will be almost like new seeds which will start fertilizing as part of the post COVID era. So I definitely feel and hope that telehealth, robotics, VR work, and also data. I think we need to be able to look at big data, and some of the medical research which is still sort of perhaps in its archaic or old avatar in terms of the way we do trials and stuff. I think while some of that methodology will be still required, I think we need to look at how can we use real life data, how can
Right.
we use big data, and in real time come up with answers to some of those important questions.
Right. Because you brought up the point of data. Do you feel a patient data is privacy?
Uh, I
Or
think,
do you see in the larger context the data being used for good things as part of data that can be analyzed?
yeah, no, I think yes, there are some data aspects which need the permission of the person, but anonymized data can still give you a lot of insight.
Right.
At the moment we are not using. So from my perspective, every patient in every hospital is providing lots of data every day.
Right.
Nobody looks at that data.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's almost insights, information going down the drain because nobody seems to be focusing or has the capacity to look at that. And a lot of that data can be easily anonymized and still give us insights that we need.
Right.
So it isn't, I think we can't hide behind the information governance aspect and say, and I understand there have been bad examples of data being used wrongly, or perhaps for the wrong reasons.
Right.
But I think we should not throw the baby with the bathwater. While we need to get some of the some of the governance better, I think data, and I keep saying that because this is an area of interest for me. I think in the next 2 decades, the most important healthcare changes will not be related to a medicine, a drug, or a medical device. I think it will be related to us using data better.
Okay.
To me, data itself is perhaps the most influential medical intervention for the next 2 decades.
Do you see the regulations changing post-COVID? Because most of the time, any drug discovery or any research in medical space takes pretty long time, and with COVID-19, a lot of these regulations are sort of being loosened and to an extent liberalized. Do you see them staying, or how do you see the future around regulations?
I think, uh, firstly, I feel healthcare systems in various countries, including the United Kingdom, I feel might get some better funding than they traditionally have. And with regard to, for example, COVID vaccine and other medications, there perhaps will be a better support from governments and non-government agencies in terms of research, in terms of vaccines and stuff. I do hope that some of the bureaucracy that has been involved with drug development, some of the bureaucracy that has been involved with vaccine development, I think I feel some of that might get a bit better. I mean, less bureaucracy, making it easier for people to collaborate and make it faster. Having said that, drug development, vaccine development takes a lot of time. The success rates are very low. And because the success rates are very low, the costs become very high, because people are not just costing that one vaccine, people are costing the 100 previous things that they tried and failed. So I think, from that perspective, I feel big pharma has a role to play as well, in terms of perhaps rethinking some of their strategies. But yes, governments do need to do their bit as well to support and make it easier for clinicians, for researchers, and similarly for startups to work together and expedite some of that development.
Right. I mean, having seen through this pandemic and obviously being center of it, what's your advice to uh, entrepreneurs, founders, and investors who are trying to do something in the health tech space?
I think the first advice is to work as closely with clinicians as you can. And obviously, all startups will have some medical advisors or clinical advisors, but I feel the cross fertilization, the cross pollination, the brainstorming of ideas that needs to happen is not perhaps happening at pace and scale as much as it should be. So I think I would say, try to sort of interact as much as you can with people who are working on the front line, on the shop floor, so to say. I think the second bit is having a process where people are able to almost analyze what are the key problems in different areas of work. So for example, I'm a neonatologist, so what are the uh, key problems that as a neonatologist I want to solve in neonatology? So similarly, there would be some in cardiology, there will be some in orthopedics, there will be some in public health. So I think understanding that those areas is quite important. So one of the ways I feel, and this might be something that you and your F50 group might need to think about, is almost priorities. So there's every part of healthcare has its own problems, but almost generating an annual list of priorities, that these are the key things that pinch healthcare professionals the most, and you could make a list and update it every 2 to 3 years, and the list might be different in different parts of the world, but it is about giving startup companies and groups of people an idea of what are the main things
Right.
that people wanted.
Right.
And I think that would be a great contribution is to generate is to generate those lists or those problems really.
Right. Is healthcare better off being run by medical professionals or business professionals in terms of management? So which is
Because of
better?
okay, I don't think we can in today's day and age say it needs to be managed by only sort of say clinicians or healthcare professionals, or it needs to be managed by only by managers. I think it's a team sport,
Right.
if we want to call it. So it's a team thing, and I think I do, being myself a clinician and clinical leader, I do think that clinician leaders need to be very closely involved with management of healthcare institutions. But at the same time, I think there's very few clinician leaders who have the management expertise in various domains of management. So, for example, financial management, for example, procurement. So, I think to me, this is a team sport, and every member of the team is there for a reason. So, the clinicians need to provide clinician leadership, they need to provide clinician insight. But I feel they should be leading this with people who have expertise in other aspects of healthcare management. So I wouldn't say this or that. I would say actually both together
Okay.
need to work as a team for betterment of patients and families. Really.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Dr. Minesh. Thanks for your insights and thanks for sparing your time from the busy schedule. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
My pleasure as well.